So he's often categorized as a metaphysical poet, and that was actually considered sort of a derogatory label on the group of poets that were writing at about this time. That label actually came much later when scholars were studying these poets, and they didn't really like them. It's kind of interesting that someone like Donne, who was amazingly articulate and incredibly creative, who was crafting a sort of a new way of poetry, their style was really discredited for quite a while, which is interesting. But it was called metaphysical poetry, and it's essentially when these authors take simple things and elevate them to this eternal level. And on the flip side, you can take eternal things, big concepts like God and eternity, and bring them down to the physical level, to the almost common, mundane level. And so it's providing these contrasts between the simple and the everyday and these giant concepts like God that really threw off some readers, and they didn't necessarily appreciate that technique at the time, and so they were criticized for a while. Essentially, these poems ask these big questions. Well, what is there? What is life like? What do we do? What does all this mean? Which is what all good literature should do anyway, but they're pretty explicit about it. So one thing that Donne does a lot, in addition to his other figurative language and other writing techniques, is he uses conceits. Conceits is a fancy word for an extended metaphor, where you draw a parallel to something simple and you make big, broad claims about it. So one of his most famous, we see those in his sonnets, so I'll talk about a few of those, but one of his most famous is called a valediction, Forbidden Mourning, which is about his wife and his love for his wife. And he compares his love for his wife with a compass. Remember a compass from high school drafting classes or any math class, right? And you're drawing circles and measuring things with it. We think, why would we compare our devotion to our wife and our love to something so simple and uninteresting? Well, that's what Valediction, Forbidden Mourning is about. The first half of the poem is explaining that he's about to go on a trip. He's going to leave for a while. He's got to go travel. But the back half of the poem draws this conceit. So when you hear conceit, that's what it's a metaphor, it's a comparison. So he said, though I must go, endure not yet a breach, but an expansion, like gold to an airy thinness beat. Gold's kind of amazing because you can take gold. It's so pure and strong that you can take a piece of gold and stretch it you can take an ounce of it, so a teeny tiny bit, an ounce, and stretch it for 50 miles, and it still retains the property of gold. All right? So he's saying, we're going to be at a great distance, but like gold that can be stretched, our love can be stretched that far. We're not going to break. We're going to be strong enough to withstand it. If they be two, they are two so, as stiff twin compasses are two. Thy soul, thy fixed foot, makes no show to move, but doth if the other do. So just like a compass where the one of them stays in the middle of the circle while the other travels, right? They're still together even though they're separated. And though it is in the center sit, yet when the other far doth roam, it leans and hearkens after it, and grows erect as that comes home. So again, as the foot travels and it grows farther apart, that center point leans towards it, like it's still part of it. And when that center point, or when the traveling part comes closer, it stands taller and they get nearer together. Such wilt thou be to me, who must, like the other foot, obliquely run. Thy firmness makes thy circle just, and makes me end where I begun. So, taking something as personal and as powerful as his love for his wife, and comparing it to something so basic and boring, it seems like it shouldn't work. And yet, it paints such a beautiful picture for us that it's like, yeah, that makes total sense. That's how it should be. We are like that when we're in love. So Samuel Johnson, who was a famous literary critic and did a lot of other philosophical writings, he hated this. He thought, you're taking these things that are not even supposed to be mentioned at the same time and you're comparing them. You're basically just trying to show off how smart you are. You're taking things that don't make any sense and you're claiming that you're really brilliant because you can make a comparison between the two. So he didn't like it, and he didn't like the metaphysical poets. And when I leave these notes, you can read his extended commentary there. But that's essentially what it was. They didn't like it very much. But time has shown that it kind of works and it's really, really good.